Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Dots podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Usama, and today I'm joined by Mr. Zahid Mubarik, who is the founder and CEO of HR Metrics, which is a Pakistani company who is mixing analytics with HR. And I think they're doing great work in developing a framework where we can do some employee lifecycle management benchmarking. So with that, we'll get into the conversation about how his journey had been overall with the foundation of the company, and then second of all, we'll get to hear a bit about his professional engagements in the past. So with that, I formally welcome you to the show. So getting started with first of all the part about your professional journey, how had it been overall with you, and what are some of the projects that you've been a part of?
Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity. I think it's good to have a short introduction before we get into a conversation. Basically, I'm running my own company by the name of HR Metrics, as you mentioned. In addition to that, I'm the partner of the SHRM, a Society for Human Resource Management is the world's largest HR association, having footprints in 180 countries and more than 306,000 members in all over the world. So I am the chapter lead for Pakistan. Also, there's another organization in the United States which is called the Center for Global Inclusion. They have developed a global standard on the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I have been on their expert panelist, which basically created a standard on the diversity and inclusion in 2021. And I also served on their board of directors. There are 9 directors across the globe. I served 2 tenures over there. Other than that, there's an international organization for standardization of Geneva. They created a working group on developing the HR standards in 2011. So they engaged 11 countries, and fortunately, the only one from the Asia was myself. The other members was from the United States, Germany, France, Netherlands, Singapore, and a few other leading countries. So that was my third, basically, overall engagement. And on the top of it, at the country level, I'm the member of the ESG task force, which has been formed by the Pakistan Stock Exchange to develop the sustainability framework for the public listed companies. And before that, I also served as a member of the special expertise panel in the United States on the human capital measurement metrics. The role of this group was to basically create the future forecast of what is coming up on the data analytics. So that's a bit about myself.
So I really wanted to get started all the way from an ideation phase. So first of all, I know a bit about the fact that you were not really in this field before, but then you dabbled into it and you founded an entire company from scratch. So first of all, tell me, how had you identified that problem, and then how did HR Metrics came into being?
So in my initial career, I served in the public sector for more than 20 years. So when I was planning to start my own business, so as a matter of strategy, one of the key questions is what you should be doing it. So I also learned that it's not only important to define what you want to do, but what you should not be doing it. So I decided to focus on the HR metrics, data analytics, and try to basically, I decided not to go into any other domain. It was you can call it a blue ocean strategy, where there was no precedence, no customer. The concept was altogether new. And that was a kind of, sense of purpose with me to basically talk about this concept and, in the first instance, learn this concept so that I can help the organization to grow in connecting the dots between the people performance and the organization performance. Why? Traditionally, you would hear this term very frequently, that people are most valuable asset in the organization. Many times I heard these sentiments, but it looks like some more of a description. There's no equation, no measurable framework. So HR metrics is a good way of basically translating those sentiments into the practical equation, with the help of which you can exactly understand what is the extent of contribution and how the people in the organization, they are making difference to the organization in the measurable terms.
Right. And now I want to talk to you about HR in specific. So if let's say we talk about HR management, then what are some of the pitfalls that the department in general suffers from? And if let's say we don't have an efficient HR department, how a company might be suffering from it?
So in the first instance, the HR department is primarily responsible for managing the employee life cycle. Now, the cycle starts with the hiring, and the onboarding, the training, compensation, reward management, up to retirement. Every aspect is supposed to be taken care of by the HR department. And there's a huge consequences by the organizations. If I talk about the consequences from the highest standpoint, you'll be surprised to know that in the United States, there's an organization which is called Tomo Ocean. They look at the valuation of the 500 Fortune companies every year, and they see that organizations are driven largely by two major assets or major contributors. One is called the tangible, which is called, for example, your cash, inventory, raw material, plant, buildings, and other is the intangible, which is the resources, human resources, the patents, intellectual property. So currently in 500 Fortune companies, 90% of the value creation comes through the intangibles. Okay. So imagine the implications for organizations if the HR department is working or not working. And if the HR department is not delivering, obviously the biggest loss is the non-performing culture and the loss of the performing employees. And when the performing employees leave the organization, there's a complete chaos. And the organization, basically, that's the start of the downfall for the organization when your HR department is not able to contribute well.
Interesting. What are some of the commonly known misconceptions about HR?
I think it could be misconception also, or the real concept also. Sometimes the people also call HR as a holiday resort. In a way, that they think that HR is a function that everyone can perform and doesn't really require much expertise. That's not the case. HR by now is completely a technical function. I mean, there are ways and means of engaging employees. And if you're not able to engage them, then your employees sleepwalk during the day. They are physically present. The phenomena is called presenteeism. Previously, it used to be absenteeism, but now it's presenteeism. So in terms of your body, you're physically present. Yeah. But in terms of your mind and soul, you're not present. So those are some of the things which basically bring the HR into a limelight. And for that matter, the HR has to be taken very seriously. And the HR management is not only the management by the HR people. They are the basic custodian of the process. The original people management comes through the line manager. So how the line managers are basically skilled in developing their people, setting realistic objectives, ensuring the fairness and the transparency, conducting their evaluations, may it be the performance evaluation or evaluation at the time of the selection of the people, because they have got a huge say. Yeah. So the effective HR departments always develop their people, their line managers, and they are the front force to deal with the people. And if people management is being done effectively, HR is in a much stronger and a comfortable position.
Excellent. That gives me a lot to think about, honestly. Now, second of all, I want to build on the conversation we had a few days ago about vertical career growth, and I want you to talk more about the fact that how can people in general align themselves with the strategic goals of the company, the targets of the company, so that they can justify either a pay raise or whatever kind of compensation they might be asking for. And I want you to provide some or a few sentences about the fact that for someone who's not working in such a role that gets more visibility, how can they accomplish when we talk about aligning oneself with company targets?
So obviously, as you understand, that any organization that exists that has got certain performance indicators, may it be a business or the non-business organizations, right? So for effective growth in the organization, it's critically important that you focus on the bottom line indicators of the organization. That is where I think many professionals, particularly the people with the support function, they lose track. You would have seen that majority of the key position in the organization at the top, the leadership position, they are enjoyed by the people from the finance, the accounts, the audit, the sales, and the marketing, and the people from the support function, like the main. I would also say the HR, IT, in certain cases the supply chain. They are not able to rise to that level. I'm talking about the leadership positions. One of the reasons they're more inward looking. They look at the process efficiency. They look at the, some of the instant things that basically are the short-term indicators. But in order to grow in the organization, you need to prove with the help of your performance how you're contributing towards the organization bottom line. And secondly, what kind of metrics do you use? Using the metrics is critical. Because, for example, if I am an HR professional, and if my goal is to improve the retention of the employees, now everybody would say that retention is important, but do I know that what is the cost of 1% loss of turnover? And because whenever there's a loss of high performance in the organization, particularly the voluntary turnover, you have to rehire the people. You have to retrain the people. There's a cost associated with losing the business because there's a delay on the account of customer service. There are defects in your service. That translates into a cost for the business. So knowing the cost of turnover is the best way to demonstrate your evidence, your basically contribution. I'm using the HR as a proxy in this case. You can do it similar things for the IT. You can do it a similar thing for the supply chain. For example, one of the giant company in the retail, the Walmart, their unique basically value proposition is the per feet efficient storage. So yes, supply chain is basically a driver of the whole organization because they're effectively able to, provide a just-in-time inventory, and that translates into a lower cost which they pass on to benefit to the customer. So how do you contribute, and how do you measure and demonstrate? I'm sure some of the functions or the individuals who are able to do it better, they're able to sell themselves in a better way to the organization. Then organization is bound to respect them and give them more growth opportunities.
Right. I want to connect that thought to another thing that I had been thinking lately about. I think for a line manager, they are the first gatekeepers in anyone's career profession, irrespective of the company that anyone works for, right? I think for a line manager, ability to inspire is a very fundamental thing in fostering those kind of employees who would be very, very passionate about what they are doing. Is there any such metric that exists from which we can gauge if a line manager has that competency, or is it a rubric where they can compare and they can learn about that ability?
As a line manager, whenever you get promoted, you have exposure to the new responsibilities, and there's always an opportunity for the training or to learn. For example, if you're in IT and you are upgraded to a new position where there are different software, different hardware, you'd get an exposure. Unfortunately, HR domain is considered to be an area where the people, they learn by their trial and error. Okay. And there are consequences of it, because if you're not able to handle somebody well, and so there are the implications on your team management. So one, that it needs to be formally learned. That is the reason that now the HR qualifications are also meant primarily for the line managers, in addition to the HR management. For example, in the finance, you have the finance for non-finance manager. So there are people manager qualification for the line manager. This is one thing. Secondly, two metrics that I would like to talk about, and these metrics are part of the global standard, ISO 30414, which is universally applicable. One is called the trust index.
Okay.
If you want to look at the performance of a manager, look at the three things: fairness, transparency, and there's one more component. Obtain the feedback from your team on account of those three things, right? So as to what extent your manager is, neutral in terms of dealing with everyone, promoting the equity, not the equality, but the equity. That means that you have to treat the people according to their performance. And if you're able to evaluate the manager on according to there's a survey instrument, and then graduate this instrument into a number, you would be able to say that, okay, the trust index of this manager is 3 on a scale of 1 to 5 or 2.5 or 3. So that will give you a better idea where the person should have been and where the person is actually now, and the gap that you find over there, you can consider as an area of opportunity. Another metric, which is called Succession Readiness Index. Okay. That means that line managers are responsible to make sure that whenever a position becomes vacant, there should be an opportunity within the organization to fill the position at the short notice. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you have to look laterally or outside the organization, and that's very time-consuming, and that has consequences for the organization. So see the Succession Readiness Index. That's also can be calculated in a way that you have a position or how many people are ready to occupy the position on a short notice. So these are some of the metrics. In terms of the calculation, not too technical, but in terms of the concept, they have a huge, I think, and a strong indicator of the performance of the line manager.
Excellent. I love how you're ready with these rational items, which I can not only listen, but I can actually process in my head. Now, when you presented this idea to different companies or C-suite people in Pakistan, what was their reaction, and what kind of feedback did you get when you pitched these ideas, these rational or quantifiable ideas to them?
On a personal level, I have been very successful. And I'll tell you the reason also why I have been successful. I usually, whenever I talk to the business people, I talk in their language. The business people have a language of the numbers, ratios, and the impact, outcomes, ROI, dollar, right?
Yeah.
So if you tell somebody, okay, you lost 10 key employees, the manager or the CEO may say, oh yeah, we have suffered a loss. But you tell you have lost X amount of dollars because of the loss of these employees, they would get more alert. So number one, that I talk to them in the financial language that I learned in the beginning of my career. I implemented this concept very seriously. Over here, I would say that many HR people, they are not very successful because they think that they can impress the seniors with their technical knowledge or with the kind of, something that may be more impressive in the description, but not using their language. Obviously, for example, if you are speaking French, and unless I do not communicate in the French language, I cannot inspire you. So using the language of the stakeholders is sometimes your stakeholders are the regulators. They are more interested in some of the things which are important for them, safety, security. Sometimes, in certain cases, your stakeholders are investors. They are purely interested in the ROI. They are not interested in the process. So knowing your stakeholder is the first and the foremost thing, which I consider a prime factor in having a communication. So I found a lot of success. And the people ask me this question also, that how do you treat the CEOs? How do you treat the board directors? I tell them this not as secret. The only thing is that you have to understand who is your stakeholders and what is the pain point for your stakeholders. And talk to them in the language, they'll be very receptive to it.
Excellent. Now, secondly, I want to talk to you about C-suite in general. And I want to talk in a way that, first of all, tell me if a CEO, or not CEO, if a C-suite person is not an external hire, what are some of the typical departments that they usually come from and why?
I think I also briefly mentioned that majority of the C-suite people, by C-suite, what I mean that one is that as a terminology, C-suite are those who report to the CEO. So for example, you have the Chief Information Officer, Chief Risk Officer, Chief Human Resource Officer, Chief Operating Officer. So functional head obviously come from the same function. For example, head of the information or the IT would be an IT person. But beyond that, majority of them, I would say more than 70% of the people, they come from the accounts and the finance background or the sales or the marketing. And then the little percentage comes from the support function. And there's a reason for that also. In their profession, they are mainly taught about focusing on the outcomes. What is the end result you have to get out of the organization? Because the organizations are primarily invested by the shareholders. So today, if you have some surplus money and you want to buy the shares of any organization, you would not be interested what is happening over there. You would like to know that how much is the dividend or the returns you get out of it, right? So those are the people, the function that I highlighted. They focus not only on the internal aspect, but the external aspect of how to satisfy the shareholders and what is their pain point, what is their takeaway. So that's the reason that they grow in a better way. Otherwise, the technical people, somehow or the other, not all of them, but majority of them, they're more look on the internal aspect, the process efficiency, the time management part of it, the cost management. All these things are important, I'm not denying. But the thing is that it's just like wearing a seat belt. So while you're driving a car, you cannot assume that if you're just wearing the seat belt, everything else would go in order. You have to make sure that you are operating in the safe environment and you're going in the right direction. So your direction setting, your leadership skills, all kind of things, they are basically in demand at the leadership level.
Right. Now I want you to talk about HR with me. If most of the C-suite people are not coming from departments who are either within HR or the HR in general, what might be the reason? And second of all, what are some of the general pitfalls that HR suffers from?
The biggest issue about the HR, and this I'm not saying as my own opinion, this is based on the various surveys. For example, the most recent survey that I came across was in 2021 by the IBM, where in a survey, I think more than 14,000 people around the world, they were asked, the executives, that to whom you would go for, a business advice when it comes to a problem. Okay. And the CFOs were number one. Okay. CFOs were number one. And the HR suffers a problem over there. One, that, as I said earlier, they are more focused on the internal compliance, process efficiency, but not knowing the market in which they operate. So the market has got many challenges. For example, your share prices fluctuate, your overall, the currency exchange rate, how your organization is being positioned overall in the industry. So what are the challenges overall? So HR people generally are not good over there. And those people within the HR who are really good, they enjoy an amazing influence. They are the part of the key inner team which makes decisions in the organization. So it's not all, but majority of them, they suffer from this problem of understanding the business. So if you don't understand, then you're not an active player on the decision table or the boardroom. So then people don't look forward to you. The second issue that I've seen based on my experience, that HR is more concerned about the compliance part of it. The compliance, no one denies the importance of the compliance, but you have to be conscious of the rest of the things in the organization. How you can basically focus on the preempting the problem rather than just dealing with the problem. Because dealing with the problem is called the reactive situation. But preempting the problem means anticipating the problems and being proactive and avoiding a problem. So that's another issue. Third thing, I would say that the HR generally is more backward-looking. There are two things. Running the organization is just like driving the car. One is your windscreen, which is always foggy, which is always unclear, and you're not sure about it in certain cases, rather in most cases when you're going into an unknown territory. The businesses operate in a very uncertain environment. The other one is called the rear view mirror. The HR people are generally more inclined to see what has happened in the past, but not what is coming up, because that's the problem or the concern for the CEO. So being concerned about the past and not looking at some of the things which are about to happen in the future, then these are some of the areas because of which they do not able to secure a kind of position or the strategic position in which the people look forward to use for certain advice or any other consultation on the important matters.
Interesting. If we talk about HR metrics now, what is your long-term vision with the company? And considering the modern-day toolkits available to us, what further or what new problems do you envision to be solving with the people that you have?
Right. So as we contributed toward developing the global HR standards, and one of those standards is the human capital analytics standards. And as I said, fortunately, I got the opportunity to develop highest number of the people. So we are operating with a lot of, purpose. And that purpose is to connect the HR performance with the organization performance in the measurable terms so that you can position the human capital as a real asset in the market, in the industry, and help the organization overcome the problem of sustainability, because organizations are struggling with to remain relevant. So this is the sense of purpose that I carry. Now, in this process, obviously, the investment that gets into learning the new tools, transmitting or sharing with the next generation it's a costly, field which not, accessible or affordable to everyone. So one of the things that currently I'm focusing on is the digitization of those tools in a way that they become accessible to, maximum people around the world, and in an affordable way. so that people can easily understand, because data analytics has been identified as a number one competency by the World Economic Forum, and not just for the HR. This is all applicable to the IT. It's all applicable to the supply chain. But, in the finance account sales, data is already a number one consideration, but even for all other faculties, it's one of the key drivers of the business, and how we can help the community, the HR communities, to leverage on this competency, so that they are able to help the organization to grow and improve their standing, and also elevate their career.
Nice, interesting. What's the best thing about the team? And the reason I ask is, like, if you go alone, you can go faster. If you want to go further, you go with the team. And now that you're running a big multinational company, what is the best thing about the team that you work with? What is their biggest strength?
I think the biggest strength that can be there for any team is the strong sense of purpose. They must feel elevated to contribute not only to themselves, but also the community they work. That's the number one thing that I feel, because currently, particularly after the COVID phenomenon, the overall employment trends have changed. The people working patterns have changed. People want to stay more relevant to the community wherever they operate, number one. And with reference to the HR management, I would say that it's the setting up their performance goals in a way that is transparent, is realistic, and they feel challenged. Challenge is important, because your team, depending upon wherever they stand, if they're not being challenged, there's always the possibility of monotonous, and they may be, I think, part of the organization, but you'll not be able to optimize their full talent or the full potential. So I would say challenge is a critical component, and the linking it with the overall purpose of the community, and I would say purpose of this universe, which currently it is defined as the ESG, environment, social governance, and like ESG, it's called the pillar of sustainability, and I feel that S, the human capital part, is the center pillar of the sustainability. So HR and people management is in a very, I think, good shape now. It's got a lot of opportunity, but depends upon the professions, how they practice it and how they take it forward.
Right. And another thing I want to talk about is that if we celebrate the successes of our teams or the employees that work with us, I think it fosters a really good culture where people have this feeling that people care about them, that their contribution matters. And if they're not present at work, their absence would be felt. So in that regard, do you have any cool traditions at work?
I think recognition, instant recognition is a good tool, good reinforcement for everyone. And I would say not only a recognition, but also if you find something which is undesirable, giving a realistic feedback is also important, which I do very religiously. Because sometimes I feel that as a line manager or as a manager, we always want to look good. So if something positive, we communicate instantly, but if something negative, we try to shy away. That should not be done. The aim is the feedback should be candid, it should be realistic, and within the time frame, the person must understand, was it a desirable or undesirable thing. So I focus more on the instant and the timely feedback, and that really pays me very well. Because if you know that your subordinate knows that the person is fair and is also, quite conscious in terms of the behavior that you demonstrate, I think they would live up to their expectation, and they would adopt it as a more of a value rather than demonstrating just a behavior.
Right. And maybe I'll extrapolate that thought as well, that I think it's not only for professional environments, but also with our relationships, with our family members, with our friends, and our communities in general. I think this should be practiced on a larger level as well, that when we are giving someone feedback, we should remove our emotions from it. And we should give them feedback based on exactly what the situation was. And we should give them something to think about, that it's not just that somebody talked about what happened, but also about what they think should have been done differently, so that people can maybe recalibrate their approach. And thank you for saying that. Now, second of all, I want to ask you from the perspective of either an early career professional or a student. So for someone who is aiming to be an HR professional, what are some of the verticals that they would be touching in their career journey overall?
So I just try to link up with your previous point. You very rightly said that the HR management, or I would say people management, is about being honest and candid. For example, if somebody is telling a lie, so there are two ways of telling it. One is that you said, okay, you're told a lie, or you say you are a liar, right? So there's a lot of difference. The concept is the same, there's a lot of difference. Liars is perpetual statement. Telling a lie is a single instance. So that's a good way of giving the feedback, right? Coming back to the things, on account of, developing your career as an HR professional, I would like to extend this definition to any profession. Obviously, HR is a subset of the profession. God has programmed each one of us with some unique competency. Number one thing is to explore what you are good at. Usually, we try to be good at everywhere. I see many parents where the children, for example, they've got 5A and 1B grade. They admonish the child for getting a B grade, not realizing that what is the strength. In our practical life, we grow in our strength. So knowing our strength, number one. Secondly, you would have heard the terminology organization brand. I am of the view that we should also create our own personal brand. You should be known for some competency. You have some competency. You should create that, polish that competency. So knowing where you're good at, and then working in that direction. And there are further two things that I feel are critically important. Leverage the technology which can optimize your competency and insulate it with the ethical aspects. Ethics is one of the core value, integrity. I talked about the trust index. That's all about ethics. Your people, your subordinate, they know that whatever you're talking, you're also demonstrating it also. You're just talking, or it's called the walk the talk. There are two different things, right? So basically, you're knowing your strength, you're leveraging your strength with the help of the technology, and third thing, demonstrating your values in a way that people should be able to trust what you say. This, I would say, a recipe for success, and it's also applicable not only to the HR, but all the professions. One thing I think, additionally, you also asked that since the HR is about managing the employee life cycles, which has got certain key functions, the recruitment, the training, the compensation. So if you want to rise to the top, ideally, you should be able to have exposure to all these areas. Now, it's an ideal situation, but does not happen always. Like, for example, in my career, when I wanted to have a broader exposure, so I learned the recruitment in one portfolio, I learned training and development in another portfolio while heading this function. And I wanted to also get the expertise on the compensation, and there was no opportunity. So I tried to create an opportunity by looking for a position to teach compensation in a university. No, I didn't have the expertise for that, but I knew that if I have to teach it, I have to learn by force, because you have to face the questions of the audience. So I try to create opportunities for myself. So in that context, you do not always get an organization which will provide you a wider exposure and they'll make you prepared for a well-rounded career. That does not happen always. So you have to look for some of the assortment of the expertise which are required to rise in your career. And then, obviously, you should be, from the ethical aspects, on the integrity point of view, if you are able to take care of it, it's a good way of, creating conditions for your growth in your career.
Absolutely. And now I want to, again, stretch this point just a little further. And the reason is that I think most of the countries, unfortunately, suffer from the lack of ethical values at a larger scale. I think if every single individual practices a certain ethical value, at least one, and then if a community combined, if we look at that domino effect, I think it reflects on their professional working, on the businesses of the country, and the economy in general, and just about the living style of the people as well. On that regard, this is a question that I ask every single one of the guests that I have. If we keep business aside, what are your personal ethical core values?
You're talking about personal, myself.
Yeah, so you mentioned integrity but let's say if we don't talk about it from a business perspective, just on a personal level, what is that one ethical core value that you strongly uphold in your life?
I think as far as I'm concerned, I would like to be what I am, right? Being original in what you are. because currently now that we are operating in the information economy where everything is available on the fingertips. Today, you ask anything you can download, or now the things have been further improved or worsened by the chat GPT,
Yeah.
where you can have a lot of information, a lot of stuff in which you may not have the expertise. So be original in wherever you are and whatever you can do. So that I try to practice very religiously. If I'm not good in something, I don't follow it, and I tell very honestly. Secondly, finding a sense of purpose. Connect your purpose not only to yourself, but to the profession that you belong, to the community in which you operate, and I would say in the universe that you live. And I try to, balance out on various fronts, because on a personal level, I also work at a very micro level with the community, which is a very humble community which I belong to. So connecting with a sense of purpose. And also, I think now that there are a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, there are a lot of disappointment or the pessimism which is being promoted. So be contented with whatever you have, and look at the positivities, and look for the opportunities, because on one hand, there are opportunity. On the other side, there are challenges. COVID, for example, is one of the most recent, has been a most recent situation where everybody complained of it. But during the COVID, there were 500 people got billionaires. There is no such precedent in the past, right? I'm not supporting this accumulation of the wealth. What I'm talking about, that whenever whenever there's a challenge, there's always an opportunity. So focus on the opportunity by being original in whatever you are.
Absolutely. And now that we are almost at the end of our conversation, although I'm having a great time having this conversation in the first place, and now I want to talk to you about family as well. Being a professional is one thing, but then family is also in the background that is a silent supporter, or like they're on the sidelines cheering for their loved one's success, right? So on that note, I want you to talk a bit about people not forgetting their family. Like, being successful in a company is one thing, but then there are a lot of sacrifices that people have to make in order to be where they are today. And you being at the C-suite level, you might have gone through a lot more sacrifices than myself. I'm not a CEO at the moment. So I want you to briefly talk about the fact that that one should be appreciative of their family, their wives, their kids, their parents, siblings, and whatnot. So what are your thoughts about that
I think there's
topic?
no doubt about it, because you use the word success, and it's up to you. What do you call a success? The success is not only getting or becoming more wealthy, it's becoming, I think, more having a happy life as well. That's one of the key also indicator of the success. So, secondly, the success is also achieved in a better way when you have the family support. So we need to acknowledge, we need to compliment, and you need to celebrate. So I came across a case study. I learned it. There was a CEO of one of the 500 Fortune companies, who does a babysitting and who also takes care of the garden on a daily basis. Oh, wow. So I was surprised, what kind of 500 Fortune company is that the person is idle. That's not the case. The person was a highly performing person. The thing is that you have to basically juggle with the resource management. Time is a critical resource, and it's up to you where do you basically, what kind of priority you allocate to your family, your work. So I think people say that's time management. I call it more of a self-management. Time is 24 hours. You cannot make it 25 hours. Yeah. You cannot make it 23 hours. So look at the people. You have one class and one breed of the people. Some of them, they go to the top. Some of them, they are not able to go high in their career. So what is there something that makes a difference? That's basically, those are some of their competency, the values. Whosoever is able to capitalize on it, they rise, and who is not able to benefit from this, they're not able to go higher in their career. So yes, no doubt about the work-life integration and taking care of your people, because your success is because of them.
Absolutely. Now that we are reaching the end of our conversation, Zahid, I want to conclude on the note that for early career professionals and students, again, what would be your advice to them? And the context is that now that there's a plethora of things that people can attain, they can start, and it's a concept of polywork, that people can do multiple things at the same time, and they don't necessarily have to stick to one. But in order to go to the top, you have to be sticking to something for long enough, right? So how should one identify that, and how should one be content with that, and how should one stick to that one thing and do it right?
So I would not be very philosophical in that assessment. For example, I would give you an example of my daughter, whom if she is sitting, she is good in fine arts. So if she is doing the fine arts, and she would forget about the food, and we really have to pull her to bring to the table. So that's a good indicator of the kind of passion that you have for something. So knowing the passion, obviously you have to explore yourself. I give you my example. It took me 20 years to find out where I'm good at. So I switched my career after having served for 20 years. So if you're able to explore and discover your strength in the beginning, you're in a better position to do that. And then chase your dream. You should have dreams, and it should be a daydream, not the night dream. So chase your dreams, and you'll come across a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, and that basically should not discourage you. Because whatever I'm talked about, I told you my journey with working with the 16 different countries, with the leading standards body, the American National Standards Institute, the British standards, the French standards, the Indonesia standards, Singapore standards. But there has been a lot of struggle behind it. Many times when I talked about something, many people, they said, oh, no, it's not workable. Well, so you're able to have success when you have basically a strong sense of purpose. So for the early career people, I would say that be original in your basically thoughts, know your strength, and basically develop something where you see a strong sense of purpose. I think these are the three ingredients. I would not like to focus on the exact function they should be function is a very micro part of your profession, but don't waste your time. Time is very critical. Give time to something, and even if you have to do something pro bono, do it. Because in the longer run, that would be shown as you can put it on your career. Because if you've done a kind of zigzag things and you would like to mask or hide those things on your CV, so don't waste time over there and be very focused and what you're good at, and then keep on chasing it.
Right. So on that thought, we'll end the conversation. Zahid, honestly, I'm really humbled with your presence and the time that you took to share your wisdom and your experience with us and our audience. And as far as our audience are concerned, if you like the content, please feel free to like, share, and support. And then do check us out on other streaming platforms as well. And until the next episode rolls out, do take care of yourself, do keep pushing towards your goals, and do not give up. This is your host, Usama, signing off, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.